Hello and welcome to today's presentation and workshop on grading systems options, the impact of grades and grading policies on student learning. For today's presentation, the learning objectives include an exploration and discussion on the role of grades and grading policies on student learning. We will also discuss strategies that will help instructors shift students' focus from grades to learning. We will review several grading systems by exploring the pros and cons of the grading systems. Our presentation will continue with a discussion on the merits of extra credit opportunities for students. Lastly, the presentation will conclude with a discussion on strategies to help instructors assist students with high-level achievement. I will begin today's presentation by asking you this question. What is the purpose of grading? Many of our students may be asking themselves, or asking you as the instructor, what is the purpose of assigning grades? Walvert and Anderson identify multiple roles that grades serve in their textbook, Effective Grading, a Tool for Learning and Assessment. According to Walvert and Anderson, grading serves as a means of evaluating a student's work. Grades are also a means of communicating to students, parents, graduate schools, professional schools, and future employers about a student's performance in college. Grades can also provide students with a feedback on their learning. The first topic I would like to explore is the role of grades and grading policies on student learning. There was a plethora of research available on the impact of grades on student learning. The running theme in most of the research was that there were many negative impacts of grading on student learning and faculty. But research also showed many opportunities for educators to better align grading and learning. Shinsky and Tanner found in their research that rather than motivating students to learn, grading appears to have the opposite effect. Their research also showed that rather than stimulating an interest in learning, grades primarily enhance students' motivation to avoid receiving bad grades, and grades appear to play a role on students' fears of punishment or shame. Their research also found that grading motivates high-achieving students to continue getting high grades, regardless of whether that goal also happens to overlap with learning. And grading lowers interest in learning and enhances anxiety and intrinsic motivation, especially among those students who are struggling. Shensky and Tanner suggested that instructors should implement small changes to promote more studying by grading less or grading differently. The suggestions include having instructors spend more time planning in-class discussions of homework and simply assigning a small number of earned points to students for completing the work in class. Another suggestion was to have students use rubrics to examine their peers' efforts and evaluate their own work, instead of instructors spending hours upon hours commenting on papers. How can we as instructors shift students' focus from grades to learning? In the past, the focus has always been on grades for both the students and teachers. But now the focus needs to be on empowering our students to take charge of their learning and measure their own success, as noted by Kuntz, 2012. As stated earlier, several research studies noted the negative impact of grades on student learning, with many of the students suggesting alternative options to grading alone. This slide shows 3 studies that promote a shift from grades to learning. Rust in 2002 noted that grades were not helpful for providing students with feedback. He suggested a change from just assigning a letter grade with no meaning. He instead suggested instructors should assess individual learning outcomes and grade whether the learning outcome had not been met, was partially met, was met, or was met well. Rust states that by using this type of assessment of learning, students receive clearer, direct feedback on their achievement of individual learning outcomes. Kuntz in 2012 and Rose in 2014 both suggested a proficiency-based grading system which focuses on specific learning targets and the demonstration of students' proficiency with the content. This system allows students multiple opportunities to prove their understanding and incorporates flexibility for individual learners rather than pushing all students through the content at the same pace, regardless of their comprehension of the material. It increases a student's ownership of his or her learning. To help students with shifting the focus from grades to learning, I would like to move our discussion to the topic of grading systems. There are several different grading systems out in the educational world that institutions could implement. But which grading system is the best indication of learning? There are many different answers to that question based on the research you believe. For today's presentation, I would like to discuss minimum grading, traditional points grading, standards-based grading, and a positive versus negative incentive system. This slide provides a brief definition of the four grading systems with a noted disadvantage of each. I found that minimum grading was the most controversial of the four noted on the slide. Research shows that teachers are divided on this grading system. While there are some positive attributes of the grading system, including mediating the variation of grades through the teacher-to-teacher grading methods and increasing student engagement and motivation, minimum grading is also thought to contribute to grade inflation and promotion of students who receive minimum grades. Traditional points is the most used grading system by instructors, but critics argue that assessing grades based on points does not accurately represent the performance or knowledge gained by the student. The positive negative incentive system based scoring on the addition or subtraction of points from a student's graded assignment. The research on this grading system did not show positive contributions to student motivation. However, there is more research that is needed to be performed on this grading system to accurately assess if this is an optimal grading system to implement. Standard-based grading is the system I thought best reflected student learning. With standard-based grading, scores are attached to the specific learning objectives of a course rather than to assignments or tests. Each score represents a student's mastery of that learning objective and may change over time in response to evidence that his or her level of understanding has changed. The disadvantages found through research did not impact students. However, there are some disadvantages for the instructor in the form of having to do more work. Standard-based grading forces instructors to articulate their learning objectives precisely and link them to the assessment, thus making the deconstruction of the subject clear. In my opinion, this is not really a disadvantage. As instructors, we are held to a higher standard, and we must be certain that we are clearly conveying to our students the purpose of the assignments we are asking them to do. Standard-based grading tells the student how well he or she mastered a particular subject by stating the proficiency level along with the grade. Now, let's examine the role of extra credit opportunities. Should faculty give students extra credit opportunities? I think that there are many benefits for students in offering extra credit, and based on the research, I think faculty should offer extra credit opportunities to students. Lee, in the 2012 article, Revisiting Extra Credit Assignments, Perspectives of College Instructors, concluded in his study that extra credit can be an effective assessment strategy in the college classroom if used properly. Extra credit provides students with an incentive to go above and beyond the course material if used to enhance lessons. It can help deepen student learning. Extra credit can help struggling students by providing them with additional learning opportunities outside the classroom while allowing them a means to increase their overall course grade. Padilla Walker, 2006, concluded in her study that students perceive positive incentives as opposed to punishing them with pop quizzes in a positive manner. These positive incentives encourage students to read their daily assignments, which improves their overall understanding of the material and facilitates learning. Finally, as instructors, we must help our students to obtain high levels of achievement. In my research, this is best achieved by teaching our students to acquire the skill of self-regulated learning. According to Zimmer, successful students report that the use of self-regulated learning strategies accounted for most of the success in schools, as cited in a Reese and Green 2014 article. In using self-regulated learning to reverse underachievement in talented students, Reese and Green noted 5 strategies for teachers to help teach students to be regulated learners. The 5 strategies are listed on the slide and include guide learner self-beliefs, goal setting and expectations, promote reflective dialogue, provide corrective feedback, help learners make connections between abstract concepts, and help learners link new experiences to prior learning. Instructors must reinforce these skills noted often to help students to become learners with high levels of achievement. This will conclude today's presentation on grading systems options. Please review the presentation handout as a handy reference tool with more specific information on grading systems operations.